Hey, welcome back everyone to the Progressive Brothers Podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Renaissance Man.
Well, welcome back everyone. Please subscribe to the channel, like the video, hit the notification bell, and peace to everybody in the chat.
Also, make sure you follow us on Twitter at Brothers_Podcast. This is episode 81. Jon Gruden? Renaissance Man, can you fill us in on the situation with Jon Gruden?
Yes. So those of you all who have been paying attention to the news, you saw Jon Gruden last week was fired by the Oakland Raiders. Longtime ESPN analyst, former coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers before that, before he got the gig with ESPN. Basically what happened last week, or I guess technically 2 weeks now, some emails were leaked by the New York, I believe it was either the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, essentially leaked some emails that he sent back in around the 2010, 2012-ish time frame, making comments about DeMaurice Smith, who was the head of the NFL's Players Association, specifically making a comment about the size of his lips, drawing comparison to the Michelin Man or Michelin tires. So that was sort of the first black eye that you could say hit him. That came out over the weekend prior to their game, and then he was obviously still the coach at the time, still got to coach, and then after the game going into earlier this past week, more emails came out, him making comments about the NFL hiring female officials, disparaging remarks there, as well as had some disparaging remarks to say about the commissioner, as well as the vice commissioner as well. And then also made some comments that the NFL forced or pressured the St. Louis Rams to draft Michael Sam, who was the first openly gay NFL player. So all of those things compounded, and that ended up in him being released. Some very prominent voices like Keyshawn Johnson very much were not surprised. Has always sort of been one that sort of thought that Jon Gruden put on a facade and was not really who he said he was. But I think the greater implications are as well is now the NFL is now NFL Players Association is now pushing for the release of all of the emails, because basically what happened with this situation is they were actually investigating the Washington football team. If people remember that, about a year or two ago, there were some accusations about a very negative, sexist type of culture, toxic work culture at the Washington football team. So they were investigating that situation. And these emails, someone came across these that Jon Gruden was sending to someone in the organization. And that's how these got leaked. So now there's a push for all 650,000 of the emails to be released, which, to me, that's a gold mine. There are all sorts of implications of what can be revealed here, because obviously just from this situation, it's pretty obvious that guys had their guards down and were saying any kind of things in emails.
Yeah, and it was the Wall Street Journal that released those emails. But from a cybersecurity perspective, they cannot delete these emails. Although they could delete it from their inbox, it doesn't delete from the server. And so what's going to happen is they're going to have an email dump from the server, and they're going to go through all of those emails, regardless if these guys deleted it or not. And so I guess what I'm trying to say here is that this is just the beginning. We're far away from the end of this, and there's going to be so many implications in all of these emails and names that get mentioned, and what the conversation was, what the subject was, and what time of the night it was generated, and who was CC'd on it, who was who may have been the person sending it out. It's just a whole lot that comes out of all of this, and it's not going to take long. I mean, I guess with artificial intelligence and scouring data from keyword standpoint and what was said, what kind of things they're looking for, they'll find out how far down the rabbit hole this goes. And I think some people need to be mindful that when you send emails out about on corporate servers and corporate devices, you can be subpoenaed back. I know in the financial industry you can only go back about 7 years, but in the NFL, it looks like they was holding on to a lot of that. Not just the NFL, but ESPN and any other entity was holding on to this stuff for quite some time, which is actually interesting because typically in the IT world, we don't really like to hold on to emails for more than 3 years. And so for it to go all the way back to 2011 speaks volumes about how they manage their systems. And so I guess when we think about what's happening, that is the culture. The culture in the NFL is basically that. And Colin Kaepernick was not wrong in taking a knee. Now that we see this, right? Roger Goodell came out and basically said, well, we were wrong, and we understand now, or whatever it was they said about Kaepernick. Before, there was a lot of people who wanted Kaepernick's head in the noose, and now that the emails are coming out, now it's like, I forgot what I said back then, right? So
that's a very interesting point you bring up, because that's one thing that sort of, I don't know if you remember, but him and Eric Reed, they settled a case out in court or outside of court. I believe they got like a $20-30 million settlement, I believe, maybe even larger, basically on their whole claim that essentially they were blackballed by the NFL. And to me, obviously there's enough information in whatever they present in their case to get a settlement, or at least apply pressure for the league to feel like they needed to settle. With this, if you have actual evidence there, I wonder if it gets into like other things, because it's been settled, obviously no double jeopardy, but if it opens up other avenues, for prosecution, or just in general, it's going to confirm what everyone kind of knew. Because if you're saying this type of stuff in email to, not even the guys in your organization, teams around the league, feeling that comfortable, I've got to imagine there's some more, just damning stuff in there. And I think, like you said, it goes back to culture, because when we look at professional sports, things like the NBA, NFL, but obviously majority black player population, not as much representation when you get to the coaching level, especially in the NFL. The NBA is a little bit better on letting guys, get a shot at coaching, especially a lot of former players. And then when you go to the ownership ranks, both of them are really bad there. The NBA at least has, Michael Jordan, who owns the Charlotte Bobcats. But the NFL has no majority black owner. Has some minority owners, I believe. What's her name? The tennis player, Venus Williams. I believe she owns like a stake in the Dolphins. So there's a little bit of ownership there, but not by far any majority ownership. But the accusation has always been thrown against the NFL that it's a good old boys club. It's very much very old school type of mentality, and just something like what John Gruden did is literally the definition of what a lot of guys have to say about higher level leadership and ownership within the NFL. So to me, it'll be interesting if we end up more of a Donald Sterling type of situation, kind of like we saw in the NBA with the Clippers, where I guess the woman he was seeing at the time basically reported him and was saying disparaging things about black players, Magic Johnson, people like that, and he ended up having to sell his team. Now obviously, I believe sold a team to Steve Ballmer, and he's obviously a major billionaire, big owner in Microsoft, and obviously it's not a big punishment, selling your team for however hundreds of $millions that you did, but it does get someone out of ownership who has that type of mentality, and I wonder if this could be the catalyst that creates some of that change in the NFL.
Yeah, and considering that Gruden worked for ESPN, it also shows the culture at ESPN, right? And you saw Jamil Hill and a couple of other executives that are now on BNC, Black News Channel, already come out and say that the culture at ESPN was pretty toxic to begin with. We saw that with Sage Steele and many others who departed from the network and who have been estranged from the network. They're also going through, the departure and what goes on at that network, and basically coming out and saying, hey, that place is a hellhole. But we now know, based on Gruden working there and some of the stuff that he was saying, that was normal. That was just the way of life at ESPN and in the NFL, and as well as in the NBA, that owners with that much immense capital and power were basically saying any and everything, and largely to players largely about players who realistically didn't do anything to anybody. It's just interesting to see that. But the other angle that I want to introduce into this is that Gruden has largely been seen with the Trump MAGA coalition prior to this. 2018, 2017, he was out there with Trump. He was on the MAGA train. And so now, and Donald Jr. is coming out to defend Gruden on all of this, interestingly enough. And so what does a guy like Gruden do? He's never going to be back into sports. What are they going to... who's going to have him on his network? A lot of commercial advertising agencies are going to be like, no, I don't want my stuff being played with this guy on your network. And so he's going to be blacklisted for quite some time. He could potentially get a job with the MAGA movement for 2024.
Yeah, the general consensus from listening to people like Max Kellerman on ESPN, Jay Williams, Keyshawn Johnson, they're of the thought process, Stephen A. Smith, they're of the thought process that, John Gruden is obviously done in the coaching capacity. I don't even see how you can even attempt to even try to, even if they gave you the shot, you're talking about a league that's 70% black. Even if you go to the collegiate ranks, you're still talking about, majority black there. So it's just kind of like, how do you as a team, rally behind someone who, has said that type of stuff? It just, I think he's done in that capacity. I don't think anybody on network television is going to touch him. And the ironic thing too is, a lot of, I think it was Keyshawn Johnson said specifically, he said, John Gruden is someone who grew up in an NFL locker room. He's been around football his life. I don't know if it was his dad or who it was, but that was involved in the coaching. But he's not like someone, some white guy, who lived in, Nebraska or wherever, somewhere in the middle of nowhere, not too many black folks around, took in all these negative stereotypes, got thrown in the middle of a locker room and, made some insensitive comments. No, like, this is a guy who's been around football, been around black players, for a long, long time, majority of his career. And, this is the type of stuff, he's saying, behind closed doors on emails, to other people in the league. So, that was the other sort of, not revelation, but just sort of thing that I think, really made the situation worse was, this is someone who knows better and is still, engaging in this type of behavior. Now to the Trump element, it once again goes to show, look at these MAGA people and the things that they find themselves, entangled with as far as situations go. It's pretty revealing. And when you mentioned that, I didn't know the piece about Trump, but it's not surprising, like I said, when you think about it. And it's just, like I said, I just hope it leads to some change and really can be a catalyst for change in the league. Because, I've always felt like the NFL is just one of those leagues. Guys get paid, but it just kind of feels like a very unfair system. Everything from, you look at contracts not being guaranteed, guys can get cut at any time, the history of, covering up concussions and things like that, especially in a sport, just that physically tolling on the body. And then, like I said, you look at, the majority of the players are black. It's just, it's always kind of just felt way out of whack versus the NBA. Just seems like, a lot more say from the players and owners actually, on the same page. even when you look at the George Floyd type situation and, national anthem, the NBA, the players and the owners were very much coming out, speaking together, against these things, very much working together on the strategy, versus it very much felt like the players and the owners were very much against one another in the NFL. So,
well, he said he didn't have a racist bone in his body. I guess maybe it's all made of cartilage or something. I don't know. I don't know how you square the circle on this, because where do you go from here if you're John Gruden? The Trump the Trump campaign for 2024 is looking to bring him on. They said that they're going to back him all the way. I guess in Mar-a-Lago they can have him as a recruiter of some sort, or some kind of like athletic secretary within the cabinet. I don't get it. Maybe EA Sports might have an idea as well. He could coach from there. Some kind of like Zoom, configuration where he's coaching remotely through Zoom to Madden players or something like that. But in any case, his career going forward will be political, and the political aspect is that he fits right in with Team MAGA.
And it plays into Trump's culture war, because you have to remember when Trump was in office, they had the whole culture war with, kneeling and Trump calling players sons of bitches and things like that, saying they should be fired, so it kind of reignites that culture war that was going on there with the Trump administration and the NFL. Not to mention too, the right will say this is another example of cancel culture.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he resides in Ohio. So I guess Trump can back him 2022 for a cabinet position in Ohio in some way, shape, or form. And so that's the political aspect to all of this, that at the end of the day, even though he takes a buyout, whatever it is he settled for, he had a 10-year contract. He didn't complete even half of it. Takes his millions of bucks, funds the MAGA movement, gets a cabinet position, and potential, or at least a potential cabinet position if Trump was to win in 2024, and then that would solidify his rebirth. But if there was a political opportunity in Ohio, if that's going to be the case, Trump is going to come out there and support him. And at this point in juncture, with the banning of CRT and anti-vaxxing and anti-mask movement, this fits right in. That somehow white men are being alienated from society and ostracized in some form of way by the left, and they could say the NFL is a left now. Somehow NFL became political. I don't know, but that's the angle that they're going to attack this from. Those are my last thoughts.
Yeah. Like I said, the situation is very telling. The ironic thing too is I've always felt, I always felt like Gruden kind of got a pass in the sense of, when the one Super Bowl he did win, he won it with Tony Dungy's team. He comes in, after they let Dungy go, and he wins that Super Bowl playing against his old team, the Raiders, in the Super Bowl. Before that, it had kind of been like maybe even less than 500, but average at best type of coach, and really, got out of the league before you, I guess you could say, before the shine sort of came off, and he was very much well regarded because of that Tampa team, and turned it into an ESPN gig, and came back to football, which a lot of people didn't feel like he really even deserved that opportunity. Has not had really a good showing the second time around. So for me, he's always been sort of someone who kind of, got a pass, got really lucky with one team and was able to ride that. And then, like Keyshawn Johnson said, fool a bunch of people into his, what his persona was. But that appears to be, these emails seem to have really brought his full character to light. And like I said, he was fired, luckily. we'll see what comes forth next. Like I said, I think the next thing to look out for is to see, you know, if more shoes start dropping with more of these emails coming out and, you know, more controversy in the NFL.
Like, share, and subscribe. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at brothers_podcast.